In my past life, on the day I went blind and fell off a building, my fiancée was kissing her first love on the hospital rooftop. When she saw my mangled body, she had a moment of awakening, a realization that came too late. Her so-called deep feelings were worth less than grass. How was it that you were the one who stood by me as I built my life from nothing? Yet I got swept away by him. I looked at her anguish with disdain, and a tear of self-mockery slipped down my cheek. After I was reborn, her first love kissed her wildly, sneering at my foolish hopes. He was sure that even though she had nothing now, she'd be wildly successful and wealthy in the future. No way. Without my help, the person he believes in is just a reckless, overly ambitious loser. On the 7th day lying in the hospital bed, blind from the car accident, I think I've gotten used to it. The world is dark even with my eyes open. Maybe it's because I woke up from my nap earlier today, and Tina's not in the room. In the hallway, 2 nurses watching over me were gossiping. Tina and Eric make such a charming couple. That proposal was the talk of the town. The way Eric knelt gave me flashbacks to those schoolyard confession moments. Aren't you from the same school as Tina? I heard the guy laying blind in that hospital bed is Tina's actual fiancé. Him? At most, he's just a persistent admirer. The kind who clings on. He got to enjoy a few good years with the new IT wealth, but it went to his head, to the point he doesn't even recognize his folks now. People like that deserve what they get, like losing their sight. Let me tell you, Tina spends this time every day on the rooftop with Eric. The two are crazy about each other. I bit hard on my lip, chest tight with a suffocating pain, as if a blade was carving into my organs. I held back from sobbing out loud. The woman who'd whispered in my ear before my nap, promising she'd celebrate my birthday when I woke up, had already cozied up with her old flame. Memories flooded in, stabbing at my mind like shards of glass, breaking down my last defenses. That grand proposal, they're perfect together, a match made in heaven. What does that make me? A joke? I felt my way off the bed, stumbling almost immediately over a chair, pain shooting up my knee. The nurse at the door heard the noise, yet paid no mind to my plight. They just laughed and pretended not to see, leaving together. I was used to this. My body was covered in bruises and marks from bumps. Nurses feigned ignorance, and Tina still didn't notice. She was always busy, swinging by for a quick look before rushing back to her company duties. Now I get it. She was only coming by in between dates with Eric, just to keep up appearances for a few minutes. I didn't want anyone to see me broken. I felt my way along the wall to the stairs. The hospital stairs were long. With each step, pain from my fractured ribs signaled me to stop. I clenched my lip, suppressing the taste of blood in my throat, stubbornly wanting to go up and demand answers. Maybe the floor had just been mopped because suddenly my foot slipped, and I heard a faint sound from my ankle as I crashed onto the ground. In a flash, memories surged back. During that year's physical test, I twisted my ankle and fell on the track. Tina dashed through the crowd towards me, lips tight, urgently finding someone to carry me to the medical office. The whole way, she gently massaged my ankle, fearing I'd hurt more. The doctor said to be cautious with movement, so she took charge of my daily commutes. At 16 or 17, we spent our days together, 3-point commuting from school, home, and the bus stop. In memory, we were like a bright comet cutting across the night sky. Our youthful years, once brilliant, seemed strangely distant now, as if we were strangers. Supporting myself upright with the wall, each step forward sent a sharper jab through my ankle, until I climbed to the top and found the iron door. Tina, the car accident was really just an accident. It's all my fault. I noticed there was an issue with the brakes the day you used the car. But with all that was going on, I forgot to tell you. The gentle female voice comforted the person in front of her, soothing them as one would an errant child, filled with pity. I could imagine how heartbroken her eyes looked at that moment. Forget it. What's done is done. If anyone's to blame, it's just Ben's bad luck. Their murmurs of young love quickly turned into the muffled sounds of restraint-breaking passion, whispers full of lingering affection. The escalating fear of dying in the car crash was still within me. My entire body shook, with each breath cutting through my chest like a knife. I went blind, broke 3 ribs, and all I got was bad luck from her. Her betrayal was scarier than the darkness. I opened the iron door and walked outside, frustrated by my inability to even tell where they were. I wanted to scream, to vent, to accuse Tina of her betrayal. But the words caught in my throat, leaving only a choked sob. In my frantic escape, someone pushed me hard from behind. Pain exploded from my foot, and with a couple of staggering steps, I found myself plummeting into emptiness. As my soul detached from my shattered body, I saw Tina rush to the scene. Crowds gathered around, her pushing through desperately, and when her eyes landed on my twisted form, she froze, then staggered back a couple of steps. I watched her expression shift from a void to cold rigidity, her cheek muscles twitching, as she rushed forward like she'd snapped, eventually collapsing at my feet. My blood, warm, seeped over her pristine skirt at her kneeling spot, causing her to tremble as if burned. As I watched her face fade to one of sorrow, for a moment, perhaps Tina did care about me after all. Tina, the dead can't return. Please accept it and move on. Eric tried to pull Tina away, but she jerked his hand off, stumbling back a few steps. Her knuckles whitened from grabbing the ground, glaring at Eric with resentment. Some tried to console her, saying, "Accept it and move on," while others commented on her depth of emotion. But it was like Tina couldn't hear them. Her hunched back trembled, anxiously trying to correct my dislocated body or wipe the blood from my face. To no avail. She closed her eyes, the grief threatening to drown her. Not daring to look at my unavenged eyes, she drew her hand back helplessly, face deathly pale, her voice a raspy whisper. "Ben, I'm sorry. Damn it, it should have been me. Why wasn't it me? This delayed affection means less to me than grass." When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the college basketball court. Standing in the middle of the court was a tall figure, Tina, my love from the past life. She had been waiting under the scorching sun for nearly half an hour. Her first love just rejected her carefully planned confession, and a bunch of classmates had gathered around to watch. Some mocked her for not knowing any better, while others pitted her for being stuck on one tree and not exploring a few more forests. Then someone in the crowd made a snide remark. "Ben, don't you like Tina? Maybe now's your chance while she's freshly single." Laughter erupted around us. Her gaze slowly fell on me, her dark eyes sparkling. At this point, she hadn't yet become calm and relaxed from the wealth of her past life. Her expression showed pride, with a barely noticeable hint of ambition. In the past, I was drawn to the pride in her eyes, always thinking she had a unique coolness no one else had. Thinking about it now, it's laughable. She was just an ordinary person. It was my affection that gave her a glow. In my last life, I felt sorry for her being ridiculed and carried a special feeling for her. I confessed my feelings right there and then, picking up her trampled heart from the mud. Eric put it in and placing mine along with it before her, giving her all the dignity and vanity she deserved. But given another chance, I'd rather she be crushed by rumors on the court. Just as Tina confidently expected me to help her out, someone parted the crowd. It was Eric. He had returned. Sweating profusely and out of breath, he took a deep breath and put a protective arm around Tina, glaring at me fiercely. "Tina is mine. Give up already." I slowly smiled. Turns out, I wasn't the only one who got a second chance at life. In the last life, Eric never ended up with Tina. He had planned to use Tina's fame and money to help his bankrupt father recover. But after I died, Tina seemed to go mad and sold the company we built together, worth billions, donating all the money to charity without keeping a dime. Eric desperately went to the apartment Tina and I used to share, keying in the code with familiarity and entering. Under the dim light, bottles scattered, and a disheveled woman cradled my photo, dead drunk. Eric continuously pleaded, hoping sweet words could bring back her love. "Tina, look at me. I'm the one standing right here. Forget about him, all right? You liked me first back then." He pulled out all the stops but got nothing more than a self-deprecating look from her. Back then, I built everything from scratch with him and faced hardships together. How could I have been swayed by someone as calculating as you? Eric kept arguing, explaining. It wasn't like that. My dad forced me to go abroad. I've always liked you, Tina, rich or poor. My feelings for you haven't changed. We can rebuild the company. You have the talent and gift. You can shine again. Tina pushed him away, ignoring the glass shards cutting into his skin without sparing a glance. Eric was furious, perpetually going to my grave to curse me, saying even in death I didn't let him have peace, still holding onto Tina's heart. The wealth and luxury I enjoyed when alive should have been his if he hadn't rejected Tina back then. I sat on my grave, amused as I watched. The admirer who once failed to catch her attention turned into a successful IT mogul within just a few years. The once arrogant rich kid who knew no troubles and trampled others' feelings into the dirt found himself on the losing end, seeing his past competition rise and hoping to turn back and reclaim what was lost. How could there be such effortless gains in the world? Tina's success was bought with my labor, drinking through the night to secure funds, working relentlessly to perfect project plans, elevating her to sit on the throne she's on now, celebrated by many. Without me, her proud and aggressive nature would have left her with nothing but crumbs in the business world. Eric couldn't hear my thoughts. His venomous eyes were fixed on my photo, his face beyond recognition in anger. If given another chance, he swore he'd never let go of Tina. And with this rebirth, he made sure of that. Eric grabbed Tina's hand, pulling her off the track, plucked the dusty roses from the ground, patting them clean with a cocky, full of confidence gesture. Tina, from this day on, you're mine. The scene shocked everyone. Moments ago, he was jeering at someone's lack of wealth, then suddenly sprang a kiss on her, staking his claim. Tina was visibly stunned, more confused than pleased, her eyes anxiously scanning the surroundings, finally landing on me. That look was painfully familiar. In the past, whenever she was troubled or indecisive, she'd look to me for help. Ben, there's a gathering tonight. Could you come with me? You know the project details better than I do. The company is short of $1 million for its first round of funding. Ben, could you try once more? The group's vice president liked you last time. Even now, I stood by her side for years as the first love. The ties from childhood, the sentiments growing up and overcoming struggles together, and all those intimate nights together didn't stop her from letting Eric off the hook when I got blinded in the car accident. A cold shiver ran down my spine as I wondered if both of them had a hand in pushing me off the building. Tina's gaze lingered on me for a bit too long. Eric, with a frown on his brow, stubbornly turned her face toward him. This time, their kiss was both tender and intense. Cheers and applause erupted around us. I pressed my lips together, raised my eyebrows slightly, and clapped along with the crowd in congratulation. As Eric had wished, within days, almost everyone on campus knew that the school heartthrob had fallen hard for a plain Cinderella. He was with Tina every step of the way, whether it was in the lecture hall or the student cafeteria. Everywhere, people could see them being all lovey-dovey. But Eric's parents weren't happy. They confronted the two at the school gate. Eric, come home with us. We've arranged for you to study abroad. You want a date? Your dad knows many capable and well-bred girls. She's not right for our family. Not a good match for you. Eric noticed the low-pressure vibe from the man next to him and suddenly looked gloomy. Dad, what are you talking about? Tina gets scholarships every year. She's amazing. Eric's dad sneered. That little scholarship. Is it enough for a Michelin restaurant or your daily expenses? Don't lose your head over a woman. We've given you a good life. You should aim higher and not be stuck. Tina interrupted sternly. Uncle, Eric isn't your ladder to climb higher. Our relationship is between us. It doesn't need your interference. After saying that, she took Eric by the hand and left. I stepped out from the shadow of a tree, watching as Eric's father was so angry he was shaking. I walked up politely. Upon learning I was Tina's classmate and childhood friend, his eyes flashed with disapproval. I pretended not to notice, tried to act like a lovelorn secret admirer, desperately speaking up for the girl I liked. Tina's really had it tough. Her dad's a gambler and drunk. Her mom couldn't take the abuse, left when Tina was young. She works at a restaurant just to pay for school. Uncle, please let them be. She's a good girl. Eric's dad's gaze was sharp as a knife. His expression kept changing. Does her family have some violent streak, too? He asked. I quickly shook my head, trying to hide my panic. No, not at all. She had a run-in with the cops in high school. Just some teenage impulsiveness. I tried to keep playing the role, but he didn't give me a chance. He dialed a number and furiously yelled into the phone. If you want to throw your life away with someone like her, then forget I'm your father. From today, all your credit cards are canceled, and you can't stay in your apartment. Let's see how long you last. Eric was shocked on the phone. Dad, why can't you believe me? Tina's gonna be a big success. We'll all be asking her for help. But his dad wouldn't listen. Eric soon received texts about his canceled cards. He was fuming. No wonder you'll go bankrupt with that attitude. You'd squander any fortune. His words made his dad nearly have a heart attack, cursing both Eric and his mom, who typically doted on her son. Try helping him behind my back and you both can leave. Eric's mom soothed his dad cautiously, not daring to oppose. Later that night, Eric burst into my dorm, his eyes blazing with anger. You messed with my folks, Ben. You're even lower than I thought. Don't think I'll leave Tina because of this. She'll always be mine, while you're nothing. I closed my book calmly, facing the enraged guy. Maybe it was my calmness, or the lack of jealousy he expected, that got under his skin. Eric flaunted a bite mark on his neck, moving closer to boast. Last night with Tina was wild. No one would guess what she's capable of. He paused, smirking with more audacity, whispering a threat. Stay away from her. What makes you think you can compete with me? Your measly paycheck after graduation or your useless adoptive father? A thunderous revelation as if my hearing was snatched away, leaving only the roaring noise. I suspected Tina had feelings for Eric, but hadn't expected her to think of me like this. Clenching the pen, its sharp tip stabbed my hand, but I felt nothing. Under the harsh light, I faced Eric. Maybe he finally saw anger in me. He was thrilled. Is it true? I never believed it. Eric scoffed. With a sudden movement, I pinned his hand to the table, driving the pen's tip into his palm forcefully. The tip broke off, blood seeping out vividly against his white skin. Eric yelped in pain. Ben, are you crazy? He picked up scissors, charged at me. Pausing as others rushed in, I angled away, the blade grazing my neck. Blood dripped to my collarbone, staining the white shirt. I bit down on the pain, silent. A gentle hand pressed the wound, and the onlooker glared at the attacker. You better have an explanation. Eric, seeing the woman shielding me, froze. He meant to blame me for starting it but remembered a past betrayal. Tina, you're protecting him? I'm your boyfriend. The touch at my neck was unnerving, so I avoided any contact with Eric. Tina frowned, concerned. You okay? I looked him in the eye, replied coldly. Get out. Tina's eyes froze for a second. She looked at me with such a complicated gaze, like she couldn't believe the boy she once had feelings for was talking to her in such a cold manner. A shiver ran down my spine. You know, Tina isn't all that different from most people. When she had nothing, all she cared about was making more money. But after she tasted the good life, her personal desires became the new goals. I never thought she really cared about Eric. It was probably just that teenage pride and a little bit of desire. She wanted everything, I guess. The cut on my neck looked scary but wasn't deep. Definitely not as bad as Eric's hand injury. After cleaning up, I went back to my desk where a ton of code and formulas filled my laptop screen. A nearly finished game script stared back at me. Then my email notification popped. It was feedback from the tech company I applied to a few days ago. As expected, I scored an interview with one of the top gaming companies in the country. I knew Tina applied there too. In the previous life, because I helped her revamp her initial game model, her work shone during the interview, ranking just behind me out of 20 others. This time, I was curious to see how far she'd get without my help. My phone screen lit up suddenly. I ignored the call, almost instinctively cutting it off. Whoever it was kept trying. When I blocked the number, they resorted to texting. Ben, do you have a heart? Mom's seriously ill. It's bad enough you can't help, but can't you at least come for a visit? The message was from my sister, not by blood. Her tone was anything but kind. I don't think she's ever called me big brother. Not that I cared. That family wasn't a real family to me. More like a toxic pit of vampires. In my past life, my foster parents were both healthy. They were still kicking when I died. But now Linda claimed her mom was sick. It had to be another one of Eric's tricks because he was mad that I outshined him tonight. Linda, my so-called sister, had an obsession with him. She was pathetic, the purest form of a sycophant. Eric and my sister, they always plotted. They couldn't outsmart anyone, but undermining me? Yeah, that was their game. I couldn't help but laugh, which caught my roommate's attention. He was more pissed about Eric's dorm antics than I was. Did he come here acting all high and mighty? I used to think he had high standards because of how he treated his followers. Turns out he's got no taste falling for Tina. I said nothing and he stopped himself. He forgot I was the biggest fool of all in the past. I sure was blinded, literally got hit, then fell to my death. I was left a mess because of those two awful people. If the universe gave me a second chance, I wasn't about to waste it. Karma's definitely coming for you, Eric. You'll see. Friday morning, I made a trip to the dingy apartment near the college. My foster parents rented a place to be close to their daughter, worried she wouldn't adapt to campus life. I pushed open the rusty gate, met with a rush of smoke and alcohol stench. The place was eerily silent, except for the hurried footsteps coming from the bedroom. Linda, with her bleached hair, appeared. Her look matched the worst parts of her parents' features. I caught a malicious glint in her eye. The sun's crazy out there. You must be thirsty. Want a drink to cool off? She offered a half-open soda like it was a royal gesture. I just glanced up, took it but didn't sip. Wasn't she supposed to be gravely ill? So where's your mom now? Linda's fake smile dropped instantly. Ben, what's with that your mom crap? Don't forget your roots. Without my family taking you in, you'd have starved on the street 1,000 times over. Heard that line so much growing up, my ears were calloused. They couldn't have kids of their own and thought taking in a kid with a compatible horoscope would solve it. Sure enough, they had Linda the next year and started looking at me like trash. If they weren't worried about bad karma from ditching me, or the annual government allowance, I would have been long gone. I always knew I wasn't loved at home, but I had hopes for family ties until that stormy night. The slap from my foster father, and the cold stare from my foster mother made sure of it. If I hadn't stabbed the man and escaped, I would have stayed trapped under their shadow forever. I never went back after that, and they never gave me a dime after. Years later, once Tina and I had our company going, they shamed me publicly for not caring for them. Never visited my grave after I died. Just called me ungrateful. Said I deserved to die young. Linda, being their real daughter, was no different. She shamelessly turned my death into a payday, blaming the hospital for neglect and got paid handsomely. She used all the money to please Eric, leaving nothing for her parents. The memory of her face brings shivers. Linda seemed anxious about me not drinking, but her phone rang, and she quickly slipped inside, closing the door to take the call. I moved to the sink, dumping the soda into a corner bowl. When she came back out, I lay sprawled on the sofa, holding the empty bottle. She kicked my shoulder with her shoe and sneered. You really thought you could let Eric get hurt? You lowlife. Today, I'm gonna strip you and record a video for the whole school to see, she said, turning to grab a camera from the cabinet. Just as she pulled the drawer open, she took a hard hit to the head, the room spun, and she passed out on the floor. The glass bottle smashed, and her phone hit the ground too. I picked it up, scrolled through the messages, and sent texts to Eric and my adoptive father. As expected, Eric was nearby and raced over when he got my message. He barged in, already whining. Why'd you take so long? Do you have any idea how hot it is out there? I'm sweating buckets. Before he could finish, a stick slammed into the back of his knees, bringing him down with a painful thud and 2 sharp slaps to his face. Things happened too fast for Eric to react. Before he could shout, someone clamped his mouth and forced an unknown liquid down his throat. Coughing hard, teary eyes mixed with snot, he finally looked up to see me standing there. What did you make me drink? He backed away a few steps, glancing over and catching sight of Linda unconscious on the ground, leaving him stammering in shock. I flipped the bowl on the table upside down, letting out a cold laugh. Obviously, it's the good stuff you brought for me. The hazy feeling in his head clued Eric in that I wasn't messing around. Panic set in as he desperately tried to make himself throw up, but couldn't stop the growing dizziness and strange sensations. I dragged him into the bedroom, locking his hands and feet with cuffs. Linda never imagined the tools she brought would be used on her precious crush. By the time I made it to the company for the interview, the candidates had already filled up the corridor. Sure enough, I spotted Tina among the crowd. She was fiddling with the edge of her jacket, something she did when she was nervous. In our previous life, we started the company together, and the first investment we landed was from the group we were interviewing with today. Back then, we had just quit our jobs, fueled by enthusiasm and dreams of the future, vowing to create the best gaming company. She handled product design. I focused on market expansion. In the conference room, waiting for the meeting, she was just as anxious as she was today. Ben, what if they don't like our design or disagree with our vision? A year's work down the drain. I clasped her uneasy hands with confidence in my voice. We'll succeed. Don't forget, you promised to take me to see the northern lights in Iceland and sunbathe on a Barcelona beach. I don't know if my certainty reassured her or if mentioning Iceland made her think of someone special, but Tina's eyes glazed over for a moment. Back then, I was oblivious, focused on the joy of a dream nearing fruition. 3 days earlier, a group contact had already approached me. He greatly valued my abilities and offered investment, but only if I outranked Tina and led as the company's main decision-maker. I didn't get it. Investors usually only care about returns. Why meddle with personnel choices? The rep was frank. Ben, when you left the company, it was a loss. You're a rare talent, but Tina's not. At most, she's a standout among the ordinary. Her abilities and vision are limited. She's reached her peak. I know you guys are dating, and in the interview you probably helped her a lot. But there's a divide between ordinary and genius. You can help her short-term, but not forever. I didn't believe him. I pushed Tina forward despite the pressure and hid my meeting with the group contact to avoid hurting her pride. Looking back now, I was foolish. Her betrayal and infidelity made me a joke to others and shattered my faith in love. It was like holding a useless umbrella and still getting drenched. Tina spotted me from a few meters away and walked over. Her eyes were bright, and noticing the cut on my neck, she asked awkwardly, "Does it still hurt?" Ignoring her concern, I shot back. "What about Eric? Aren't you two inseparable? How come he's not backing you on this big interview?" Tina looked stunned, then dropped her gaze with a slight furrow in her brow. "He's an art student, he wouldn't get it. He couldn't help me, unlike you. You always gave me so much inspiration for my designs." Her words seemed to trigger something, flooding her with memories. I never knew she liked talking so much. I gave a self-deprecating smile. "Ben, are you listening?" Her voice was a bit hoarse. I silently stared at her, finally speaking calmly. "Tina, did you tell Eric about how my adoptive father almost beat me up?" Her breathing hitched, and after a pause, she confessed. "He asked me first. I don't know how he found out. Where else would he have learned that? Maybe 10 years down the line, in a post-coital chat, they had a casual talk. Or Eric might have been whining and Tina brought it up as a joke. Though I had suspected it, hearing her confirm it made my chest ache like an ice pick through my heart. Not because of her, but because of those pathetic 10 years I wasted, making me the butt of the joke. As the interview was about to start, Tina got a call, her expression changing as she suddenly prepared to leave. But she stopped when her name was called by HR staff. Her expression showed deep conflict. I smiled. "Is it someone important? The company hires every year. You'll get another chance. Don't leave regrets." The spark in Tina's eyes ignited instantly. Of course, a single interview couldn't outweigh Eric's safety. If she got Eric's parents' approval, she'd have no worries climbing up in the future. Any hesitation gone, Tina gave up the interview and rushed off in the direction I'd come from. Grabbing my documents, I walked into the conference room, listening to the deep voice of the man leading the meeting. Due to a strategic realignment, this will be Far Light Group's last recruitment drive. Congrats on catching the final train. With a job offer from the new company, I returned to campus, where rumors had spread like wildfire. Tina got into a fight over the campus heartthrob. By the time cops and an ambulance arrived, the place was packed. Everyone was spreading rumors like they saw it with their own eyes. Word is, when the person was carried out, they were unconscious and covered in blood. The scene was a mess, sheets everywhere. Eric claimed he was drugged, but the woman said Eric made the first move. When the police took statements, no one's story matched up. Whether Eric was into it or not wasn't clear. But Tina's assault? That was a sure thing. No idea if she's getting expelled for that. When I got to the hospital, my stepdad was already awake. He had a broken rib and leg, lying there like a dead fish. My stepmom was sobbing, almost passing out, cursing Eric and Tina, demanding justice. Linda hid in the corner, too scared to even make a peep. As soon as I walked into the room, Linda made a beeline for me, grabbing my collar, looking furious. "It was you. You did this, didn't you?" Her commotion caught the cop's attention by the door, so she let go. I straightened my shirt and whispered with a mocking tone, "Yeah, I did it. Go ahead. Tell the cops. Tell them how you and Eric planned to mess me up, how you got those drugs." Linda's eyes were red, her fists clenched, shaking with rage, but she didn't argue back, just breathing heavily. I gave her shoulder a little pat, in a tone full of fake sincerity. "Sis, come on, we're family. Dad's hurt. Just look at the medical bills, thousands a day. Maybe you should talk to Eric, settle this quietly. Our family won't go after him and Tina for assault if he wants to let things die down." Linda was torn, her gaze shifting towards our father. Angry and lost, she blamed him for breaking her heart, but also herself for not stopping the chaos in time. But if Dad ended up humiliated, how would her life turn out? Finally, she made up her mind and cornered Eric on his way back to school. She thought she'd have to argue, but to her surprise, the guy instantly agreed, asking only that the complaint against Tina be dropped. Linda had mixed feelings. Even though he was forgiving, it didn't make her feel any better. "You really like her that much? What's so special about her for you to make such a sacrifice?" she asked. Eric's face grew dark. It's not like he didn't want to skin Ben alive, but what can he do? If the police pursued it, it'd reflect badly on him too. Damaging them would hurt him. Why bother? Tina's future was as bright as the sun. She couldn't have this blemish, couldn't get expelled. So what if he had to take the heat now? When Tina makes it big, stepping over these folks would be a cakewalk. That time isn't far off. Tina's a genius. After graduation and with a company, success awaits. Why get tangled with folks beneath notice? She's got a bright future. The scandal ended with both families making peace. Eric publicly said he was out of it from mixing meds with booze, just a big misunderstanding. Even though Tina wasn't legally responsible anymore, she still broke school rules by injuring someone. She wasn't expelled but got a serious note on her record, and both her scholarship and spot in the national tech competition were revoked. When the director handed me the competition form, I happily signed. "Thanks, Prof. I'll make the school proud. The school wanted you from the start. Don't know why you were pushing for Tina," the director said. "Now it's back on you. Don't let us down. Last time around, fate didn't favor me." Tina shone in the competition, earning plenty of opportunities. She was proud for a long time, thinking she matched me. Even years later, Tina flaunted this win when she became celebrated. It was her only win over me. Even though I didn't compete, she thought the school didn't recognize my talent. While at the Capitol for the school competition, my roommate kept me posted about Tina and Eric's whereabouts. Unable to handle rumors, they moved out and got a place together. Eric continued his lavish lifestyle, refusing any reduction in his living standards. To keep him happy, Tina skipped legit internships for a bar gig, coming home late to their cramped apartment. Her efforts earned her criticism instead of gratitude. "How can you earn sleazy cash like this? Aren't you a computer science major? Start a company, Make games, hit it big, Eric yelled. Do you want us stuck in this hole like your parents? Tina's expression was stormy. Sleazy? Broke? Her exhaustion and frustration, plus being cheated on without complaint, erupted. Since when was I a pauper? She snapped. This sleazy cash paid for my high school and got me to college. If you look down on my parents, why get with me? Remember, on the court you said I wasn't good enough and then changed your mind. She seemed to suddenly remember something, a flicker of confusion crossing her eyes. Was it because of Ben? Once doubt starts creeping in between people, trust crumbles faster than a volcanic eruption. Eric grabbed Tina's hand, flustered and at a loss for words, desperately trying to explain himself. Of course not. I only refused back then to test you. Tina, you're so talented. Don't waste it in unworthy places. Don't worry about money. I'll figure something out. You just focus on your startup. They hugged again, but this time, each had their own thoughts. During this time, Eric's parents tried several times to bring their son back home. Eric refused firmly, even when his dad threatened to cut him off or when his mom cried like she was about to kneel. He was determined to nurture this potential no matter what happened. The first game I made launched successfully with the help of another company and received great feedback as soon as it hit the market. The number of downloads increased sharply. Utilizing the experience from my past life and an understanding of the young generation's psyche, the success of the new game was expected. But when the first payment came through, I was so excited I couldn't sleep all night. Even though my net worth in my previous life was way beyond that, even when I later received trivial monthly checks to simulate the joy of a wage earner, I never felt as delighted gazing at my account balance as I did now. From now on, every penny I earn won't be split with Tina. I am me, she is her, and nobody would link our names together anymore. I have countless ideas and designs in my head, whereas she, burdened with consequences, missed one opportunity after another. With Eric, who dreamed of wealth every day, how far could she really go? Winning the national design competition brought honor to the school, adding a prominent mark to my resume, and the top resources of the academy were all directed towards me. Just as I was apartment hunting, a spacious 3-bedroom facing south with great sunlight and views, I got a congratulatory message from the vice president of Far Light Group. The key was this area would be redeveloped into a commercial street within a few years, tripling in value. Linda somehow found out about my house purchase and, with her adoptive parents, blocked me at the company entrance. Turns out, Eric was broke but couldn't shake his habit of spending lavishly, treating her like an ATM for Tina. Not wanting to lose face in front of her god, Linda borrowed heavily across various platforms and eventually even high-interest loans, snowballing into a debt of $50,000. Debt collectors came knocking, threatening to cut fingers if it wasn't repaid in 3 days. Her adoptive parents saw her as their hope for the future and couldn't bear seeing her crippled, so they set their sights on me. Ben, buying a house secretly and not telling your family? Quickly transfer it to your sister's name and hand over $50,000 to help repay the debt. I laughed coldly, looking at them as if they were strangers. Sister? Didn't you cancel the adoption when I was 18, knowing the state wouldn't support grown orphans anymore? They tried to make more of a fuss but got escorted out by security. To my surprise, her adoptive family was so frightened by the debt collectors they went into hiding, having everything of value taken away. Out of options, her adoptive father kidnapped Eric, hoping his parents would pay up to bail him out. Unfortunately, Eric's family was already swept up in a debt crisis, with all assets seized and auctioned by the court. In my past life, Eric's dad kept up the pretense a little longer by sending him abroad with laundered money. This time, Eric's stubbornness sped up the downfall of the Ito family. When her adoptive father, desperate, stole a car from a repair shop, intending to kidnap Eric, he found nothing but Eric's parents' bankruptcy announcement. In anger, he vented it all on Eric. After a night of torment, Eric saw a chance at dawn, attempting a getaway in a car with failed brakes, crashing straight into a bridge barrier. The next time I saw him was half a month later. Eric, who had been in a coma for 2 weeks, finally woke up, now paralyzed from the waist down, bound to a wheelchair for life. As I stood at the hospital room door, listening to his cries, I recalled waking from my coma in my past life, only to be told my eyes were irreversibly damaged, never to see the light again. My feelings mirrored his exactly. Karma works in mysterious ways. He's paying for his past life's sins. As I was about to leave, I overheard a conversation between Eric and Tina in the room. Your crippled legs are your karma. The woman's voice was chillingly cold, possessing the authority only someone who's been through countless storms could have. From just one sentence, I knew she was different now. I stopped in my tracks, one thought flashing brilliantly in my mind, emotions flooding over like a storm in my heart. Eric slowly, painfully lifted his head from the bed, looking at Tina just a few steps away, eyes trembling like an earthquake. Tina, when did you come back? The vacant emotion in her eyes reminded him of the past, of how she looked at him right after Ben's death. So close, yet a world apart. Trying to bridge the gap, he attempted to get out of bed, but his legs refused, and inertia threw him to the floor. Eric, ignoring how pathetic he looked, propped himself on his elbows, trying to crawl towards Tina. She merely stepped back, avoiding his touch. Don't touch me, dirty. Tina, you can't treat me like this, he begged, eyes pleading with a mixture of sorrow. I never wronged you in this life. I'm the one who's stuck with you now. Tina lowered her eyes and let out a mocking laugh. Living another life? Can the sins from the past really be canceled out? Why don't you ask Ben if he'd agree, if he could forgive? You blinded him and caused his death from a fall. After that, no matter how much Eric pleaded, Tina turned, pushed open the hospital room door, and her eyes locked directly with mine. Inside, it was like a storm was raging, memories of dying, and a mess of emotions clashed violently. Sure enough, Eric had a part in my death too. Just losing a leg wasn't enough. If before, I had even the slightest hesitation about this life's Tina, it disappeared completely from that moment onward. From then on, Tina started appearing frequently around me. Like she was obsessed, she'd wait at my house, my office, everywhere I usually went, from dawn until dusk, from late fall to the winter solstice. Seeing her lost and desolate expression in the pouring rain reminded me of the last life, when not long after my death, she cried with regret at my grave, kneeling in the rain, praying for another chance. Overlapping images, I let out a mocking laugh, feeling like my eyes were just getting dirtier. A few days later, a disheveled woman caught Tina's arm, crying hysterically outside my company building. It was Tina's mother, who had abandoned her in her youth to run off with another lover. You could say that her inferiority and pride stemmed entirely from this woman. In the last life, I knew about her yearning for her mother deep down. I went to a lot of trouble to track her down, only to get in a major car accident on my way back. When Tina saw the woman, she froze, her eyes red and focused on the other, but her hoarse voice couldn't call out those two words. The woman was clearly emotional too, but her eyes didn't hold the joy of a reunion. Instead, they looked like a soul cast into hell longing for the living. Daughter, save your brother. He's my life. Tina's mother's younger son from her second marriage was lying in the hospital with kidney failure, urgently needing a transplant. After multiple searches, she couldn't find any trace of Tina. Just as she was about to give up, I found her. Not only did I give her money for medical bills, but I also provided Tina's address. Naturally, she treated me like a saint. Seeing her mother for the first time in years, she wasn't asked how she'd been all this time. Instead, she was asked to donate her kidney to a brother she'd never met. For the proud Tina who longed for motherly love, it was more torturous than 1,000 cuts. I knew how troublesome that woman could be. Whether to repay the debt of giving birth or to break this cursed connection, Tina's kidney would be donated no matter what. After waking up from the anesthesia, Tina saw me waiting in the operating room and got excited trying to sit up. I glanced at her, holding a booklet of post-surgery precautions. The doctor said donating a kidney can damage kidney function. Your immunity and metabolism will be worse from now on. Tina was silent for a long time and then whispered, "It's okay." I chuckled lightly. That's right, not much difference. It's all karma. Tina in front of me looked at me, the emotions in her eyes like tangled threads, until they suddenly found the end, and she was wide awake. Benyu. Tears welled up instantly, filled with regret. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Her voice shook fiercely, chest rising and falling rapidly, reaching out to touch me. I stood there, like watching a comedy, repeating, "Don't touch me. Dirty." Tina's voice was so dry it failed her. She shut her eyes in pain, my words reopening the past she couldn't face. You won't forgive me, right? I looked at her coldly, the mockery in my eyes almost overflowing, pushed open the door, and walked straight out. Soon, alarms blared behind me. Doctors and nurses rushed into the patient's room when they heard, as her post-op emotional surge caused her to faint again. The wind was strong on the hospital rooftop. I leaned back on a deck chair, waiting for Eric to wake up. In just a month, it seemed like Eric had aged 10 years, and he looked severely underweight. With no money for a caregiver, hospital bills constantly overdue, the nurse didn't bother to hide her disdain. From a groggy sleep, he blinked his eyes open to see his legs dangling stories above the ground, shivering all over out of fear, throat hoarse like a duck, wanting to cry out but scared to use any force, terrified of falling to his death. You're awake. The view from the rooftop is nice. No wonder you and Tina liked having secret meetings here. The moment Eric turned his head and saw me, he froze. It's you. I nodded, resting my chin on my hand, eyeing him. It's me, surprised? In a flash, memories poured in, and Eric, like a moth stepping into a trap, finally realized the danger when caught in the spider's web. You tricked me. You always remembered your past life. Eric's voice turned harsh. You turned me into this ghost of a person. You wanted to hog Tina. Her time was never enough for you in the last life. And now you want to fight me for her again. I impatiently rubbed my ear and pushed the wheelchair a bit forward, the annoying voice quieting significantly. Tina's in the ER downstairs. If she makes it, I'll be at your wedding. I meant it sincerely, but Eric didn't believe me. What did you do to Tina? Are you crazy? Without her, you'll be broke this whole life. Felt like he'd told a joke. How could I? I got a car, a house, a bright future. My new company's getting approved next month. First round funding of $1 million already in, sanctioned by my old company. Didn't you know? No way. No way. Eric screamed, tearing his hair, forgetting his crippled legs, reaching to attack me but falling to the ground. His head hit, bleeding profusely, and he passed out. Linda visited Eric a few times in the hospital and then took him home. The guy she once idolized is now in this state, and Linda doesn't feel a bit of sympathy. His foster dad got arrested for kidnapping and abuse, and his foster mom disappeared, afraid debt collectors would come knocking. Eric thought Linda still had feelings for him and that she brought him back to take care of him, feeling a bit smug about it. But he was totally blindsided when one night, a group of people stormed into the house. Linda humbly accepted a stack of cash from them and then turned Eric over. Much later on, I learned from Linda herself, who had been caught by the police, that she sold Eric to the circus. In that place, disabilities are a money-making gimmick, and slightly attractive oddities get even more attention from the crowd. When I left the police station, the sun was shining bright. My future seemed like cold light meeting the brilliant sun, and my heart felt like a plant turning towards the light, ready to grow.